Member for Calgary Mountain View.
Speaker, with some caution, because I can't remember whether I spoke to this before. I'm assuming the table will tell me if I did. But I would certainly like to raise the opportunity for this government to look at this again. It reminds me a lot of George Bush's Clear Skies bill and some of the decisions that he made around forestry, talking about a protective forestry act down there. It's actually the opposite of what is actually being suggested in the name of the bill, and ensuring an independent monitoring agency, when in fact we're taking away an independent monitoring agency and putting it under the government again, which it was in the past. It flies in the face of, I guess, what many of us in this House over the last 20 years were calling for an environment, was independent monitoring of the oil sands, and people like Dr. David Schindler had to come up and somehow find the resources and do some independent monitoring and assessment of some of the impacts on the Athabasca River associated with oil sands activity. Reiterate what has been known for years about some of the groundwater leakage from some of these tailings ponds, and the substantial changes that occurred in fish health, as well as the potential for human health risk. It may well be the case that this government will monitor in a more fastidious and evidence-based way. What many of us in Alberta have come to realize is that without some independence, without perhaps some federal involvement, which this was initiated by, in fact, the previous government were forced to set up an independent monitoring agency by the federal government, get independent scientists from across the country, and yes, you have to pay more for that, but there is a new sense of, I guess, credibility and not only locally but internationally when you set up that kind of a monitoring agency. And it's unfortunate that we don't have the resources to do better than to bring it into house again, because a tremendous amount of thought and effort and investment went into AEMERA, and it needed some stronger oversight. It needed some more strict control in terms of its interference in some cases, as I've heard, with Alberta Environment and its attempt to actually control the agenda of Alberta Environment. Its specific role should have been defined very clearly on the oil sands and other aspects of environmental assessment, air quality, river flows, toxic emissions, measurements that aren't properly the purview of the Alberta government could have been maintained there. But to abandon it wholesale and to have the temerity, I guess, to say we're now going to ensure independence when the very act of creating AEMERA was an attempt to create some independence, raises questions about what kind of communications we're dealing with here. Very ambiguous and in fact misleading, I would argue. So while the decision's been made, and it's clear that at least with this government, this is the way it's going to go. And to be fair, I see no reason why, with a stronger environmental agenda in this government, we're going to see better monitoring than we've seen in the past. It still begs the question, why enshrine it? Why destroy a body that has the credibility of not only the scientific community, who have protested loudly this change of direction, but it also begs the question, if a future government comes in, would they be prepared to monitor it in an honest and evidence-based way and ensure independent reporting to the legislature? Again, an amendment that would be favorable from my point of view would be to have this body report independently to the legislature. As long as a body is reporting to the minister, we know what happens over time. The minister does not like to be embarrassed. The minister does not like to see bad news. Reports get amended, reports get polished, you might say, and we all begin to doubt the credibility of the findings. So, I mean, in the face of it, this suggests, again, that while one could couch this in terms of savings, financial savings, one is doing a serious disservice to the whole scientific community, the aspect of independence, the recognition that this was progress 3 years or so ago when the federal government, provincial government, and the industry came together to say we will independently fund a body that will be directing the indicators, monitoring the impacts, and reporting independently to Albertans and to the world what's improving, what's not improving, and what changes need to be made to ensure that water and air quality in the area is second to none, or at least not being adversely affected by the activities in the oil sands. So it's difficult to support this, given both that it's reversing decisions that this legislature made under duress, under national duress, and this is a government that wants new pipelines built based on credibility, environmental credibility, and yet they're dissolving an organization that a lot of preparation and investment went into. So that's all I need to say. Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I got the clapping I needed.
Are there any questions or comments to the member from Calgary Mountain View under 29-2A? For Calgary Lougheed?